listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joined by Sean.
Hello.
And we'll be discussing The Ritual, which is a new movie that's available on Netflix. It's from directed David Bruckner. And it is a movie about some male friends who go into the woods and, well, you know,
For me, that film quickly is... It is the film that maybe a lot of people wanted that got disappointed that nothing came at night and it comes at night.
Yeah.
Or that there weren't witches flying around attacking people in The Witch.
Yeah.
You know, like it feels like those types of films and as far as tone, but it doesn't show restraint in the same ways. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it kind of, it maybe goes further than a lot of recent... as we call them, prestige horror films.
Yeah.
Some of the A24 releases and stuff, like a lot of those, you know, they're more worried about the themes or the story versus maybe the directors feel like it's making it cheaper by, you know what I mean, going more genre or putting actual monsters or anything in at all. This film, it almost feels like almost from another time. Like, you know what I mean? Like this film was like, aside from the effects being good, it's like, this seems like it would have been an awesome like film in the 80s or 90s or something. Like
because there's not much technology that really makes it modern.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know, just something about the way, the movie itself, like the storytelling and all that, like, yeah, they kind of, I don't know, they give it to you. They give you a film, deliver, and don't try to hide things too much.
Yeah.
They do a little bit, but it definitely is not a film that will give you blue balls.
Yeah.
Like some horror films. And that's what some horror fans get mad about that.
Yeah, it's not...
I think this is a perfect film for them.
Yeah, because it's not the... Because like I said, it does have some of the trappings of prestige horror with kind of having like a deeper meaning to some of it. But it doesn't do the thing that a lot of those movies have done, like you said, where... you have build up, or you have a very effective trailer, or you have like a title that's very evocative, and then the movie itself is mostly just tension and, you know, tense situations, and then little if anything is shown. This one has like those elements and you think it might do that, and then it actually goes and shows like, bam, here's what's going on.
Yeah. For me, it felt like it's like if the Blair Witch, but if stuff actually happened, kind of a little bit.
Yeah, because when I watched this, I was like, this is kind of what I think people are wanting when they did that Blair Witch reboot.
Yeah.
And then the found footage, because this movie's not found footage, it's all traditional cinematic. And I think that the found footage aspect, like this movie is found footage, I think would be bad. Just because it'd be another Blair Witch, you know, walking through the woods knockoff. And instead, you know, it's a different type of movie. But
I'm excited to talk about it. A lot of people were singing high praises of it, and I ended up enjoying it. I'll just say that much at least.
So before we discuss The Ritual, we can briefly discuss some things we've watched that we may recommend. And we're recording this on February 18th on Sunday.
Well, quick Halloween update. They finished shooting, right?
Well, they finished Laurie Strode's part, so Jamie Lee Curtis is done. Okay. It sounds like they'll be wrapping up soon. So Halloween will be done and released.
So if they're shooting chronologically, she dies 3/4 way through the film,
or two. Like I said, it sounds like they're mostly done.
Yeah.
We'll see, because you know, like the Blumhouse movies, most time like 21 days or 18 days, like that. So if she was there for 2 weeks, that makes sense. If the other stuff's like pickups or like scenes that she isn't in. The person
that plays, I guess, her minor spoilers, our granddaughter in the film.
Yeah.
I saw her tagged in a photo on Instagram, and I think her Instagram, she's been posting several pictures too.
Yeah.
Of, you know, just different scenes and stuff like that. Like, I mean, basically, it's nothing too spoilery. You know, it's like, okay, there's these kids at high school, you know what I mean, or high school scene or something.
What was the Dark Universe horror database?
They're all
they've
over
they've been like on the set taking videos and like walkthroughs of some of the things and sharing it, which has been really cool to see. So I think from our page, I think you shared one of their videos. It was like a walkthrough, and they have other ones. If you follow their page, you can see other stuff. But
there's a lot out there about this film, more than I expected. You know what I mean? Like, I did not expect to see much from it until we saw a trailer. But we're seeing at least a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Like even, Jamie Lee Curtis and them are posting teaser pictures and stuff. So it's kind of cool that they're being open about it. Cause I mean, it's Halloween. People know what it possibly is just going to be like.
Well, I think too, they know that, making a moderately budgeted version of Halloween, having all this stuff being shared on social media now helps build buzz for it. And it's all free. Jamie Lee Curtis, taking a picture and sharing it is free.
Yeah.
And then somebody, letting
picked up by all the news sites
and letting some people have access just to walk through with like a video camera and just get some wide shots of the set and stuff, that builds buzz and that helps other people, anticipate it. And then maybe they're trying different techniques to advertise it or and too, because like a lot of times when big movies shoot, people can get on set and see stuff. It's just a lot of times they'll shoot movies under fake names and then have it mostly be soundstage stuff where you can't see anything. But this, because like there's pictures of John Carpenter on set, like he's actually on set, and they're like inside of a house. So it looks like they're mostly shooting it like in practical locations, which is really cool. And it's not just studio, indoor settings and things like that. But so Halloween. It's been, I think it's, at this point, it's either very close to wrapping or it has wrapped.
Is it 10/17 when it's coming out?
Yeah, so it's coming out in October, so it seems as if they've shot it with plenty of time to get it done, so we will be seeing it. Maybe they can get the cameras rolling on a Friday the 13th in the next 5 years. But there's that lawsuit going on that they need to figure out first and all that. But yeah, so the Halloween stuff is interesting. So you can search all that stuff on Instagram or you can just Google search for Halloween 2018. I'm sure you see pictures of all that stuff or follow Jamie Lee Curtis or different people. So
yeah, that's cool that stuff's been out there because the fans are definitely hungry for it,
Yeah, I mean, and two, it's one of those things where everybody's like, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, the camera's rolled.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen. But like on the movie, so Black Panther is poised to do big box office for the weekend. It's definitely going to set like records for the month of February. It'll set records for movies directed by African American directors for like opening weekend. Because it'll probably make more in this opening. Since there's a holiday on Monday, from Friday to Monday, it'll probably make more than Get Out, or it definitely will make more than Get Out. So it'll be like one of the highest grossing movies directed by like a non-white man in a while. And you had like Patty Jenkins on Wonder Woman, but that, that in of itself was a step forward, and this would be a step forward too.
Patty Jenkins isn't white?
No, she's white, but she's a woman. So I was just saying.
Okay. I was
just thinking,
what?
so having a woman direct a movie that did that much box office was really, a step forward. Or giving the reins to someone was the main thing. And then this movie seems to be on a similar track to make close to what that made, or because Wonder Woman made a lot of money. So this movie, if it has the legs that Wonder Woman did, not making a comment about body image, just the movie lasts as
Nobody has gal's legs.
if the movie has like similar week to week drops, it'll be a huge hit. But regardless, it's making a lot of money. It's got good reviews from like CinemaScore. Now there have been like online smear campaigns between like supposedly some DC fans were trying to get the rating down, and some white supremacists were trying to get the ratings down.
Babies.
It's like, just enjoy the movies, guys. Even if you
don't pay attention to them if you don't care about it.
Yeah, just ignore it. I mean, and do whatever. But like the Black Panther, like I saw it, and I enjoyed it. I thought that it was a vastly different type of superhero film than a lot of the other movies, and it's a standalone, like just Black Panther, and it's a different type of origin story because you already saw Black Panther in Captain America: Civil War. So that in that movie, you already saw the character and you saw like, oh, what happened to his dad? And then you see him use his suit and powers and stuff like that. This movie goes more into the backstory of Wakanda and like his actual family and then in the current situation.
Is this film set post-Civil War?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's set like, it starts almost immediately after because...
they've never really jumped back. I didn't expect them to, but I wasn't for sure.
Yeah, they have some flashbacks and stuff from the 90s, but... it starts off almost immediately after Civil War ends, and you have Black Panther back in Wakanda, so you find out more about that place, and it's essentially just, was it vibranium is like a material that when it was like from an asteroid or something and crashed on Earth in Africa.
Unobtainium?
Yeah.
What is that from?
Avatar.
Yeah, okay. It's so stupid.
So the Wakandans had that vibranium material, that they use to kind of create like technologically advanced society. So a lot of people said the movie's like Afrofuturist. So it's just like what would Africa look like with, you know, incredibly enhanced technology like in the future. And that's currently, you know, what it looks like. And it's basically just to the rest of the world, it looks like a third world country that's like surrounded by forest and jungle. And in reality, you know, had this super advanced technology and they're able to, you know, cloak it from people. And then it's just about different things that go on within Wakanda and some people that show up outside of it. And the social messaging in it is interesting. So it's not just, you know, good guy, bad guy punching each other. I mean, there are some good guy, bad guy punching each other scenes, but there are other things going on. And it follows in tradition of like, so Spider-Man Homecoming gave their villain good motivation. You're like, I kind of see his point.
Yeah.
And then in this movie, the bad guy, you're like, regardless of how he went about things, like he has a point. Now, there have been people who break down what the political messaging is, and some of it seems to be pretty accurate. Some of it's quite troubling. So don't go and read.
Troubling on their opinions of it, not on the reality of it. Right?
Yes, not the reality of the movie. The movie itself has, you know, messaging that ultimately I don't think you can see as negative, but just like some of the people who are just, I think, being trolls, instead of just saying I hated this movie, they just warped what the messaging was to try to make people who did like it not like what they're talking about. So, like, you can avoid all the BS reviews out there, but the movie itself, like, it was an entertaining movie from beginning to end. I mean, it did have some, like, issues here and there, like, you kind of skipped over this a little and things like that. But, I mean, no more than any of the other big-budget superhero films have had. It's just the nature of... Because I think they said the original cut was 4 hours. So I'm assuming...
Cool. I mean, that's cool that, like, they had that much to say. You know
so
what I
I'm
mean?
figuring that some of the stuff that had minor quibbles with was probably stuff that hit the cutting room floor at some point because they said that it didn't really move things along.
What? How long is the film?
It's like 2 hours, I think. I have to look. I mean, all those movies at this point get to be pretty long.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I mean, you know, busier now, so it's harder to get to the movies. I do want to see it. Annihilation comes out next week, too.
Yeah, it's 2 hours, 14 minutes.
Okay, so I don't know if I have my workload may free up a little bit this week, so I may try to go see it late night one night, but I also don't want to burn up my movie pass as far as like time because I really want to see Annihilation.
Yeah.
And then Mute comes out on Netflix, I think, next week as well.
What does?
Mute. Isn't it called Mute?
What is that?
Duncan Jones.
Oh, I don't know.
The Blade Runner set in Berlin-esque film with Paul Rudd and I don't know who else.
Yeah, they have so many movies coming out to Netflix.
I'm excited for that. They made like a graphic novel. It's a spiritual successor to Moon, kind of.
Yeah.
In that like that sort of.
See, what Netflix needs to do is they need to have a coming soon tab that you can see all the things they have planned for release. And then have it set to automatically add it to your queue and give you like a notification the day it releases.
It would be sweet too if you could just like, hey, I want to see everything coming from this director or these directors.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have Netflix originals on there yet, if it's just any of their films, you can say, hey, I'm going to click these directors. Like, I know I'm at least interested in seeing what they have because as soon as that stuff hits Netflix, within like 4 or 5 days, it is somewhat buried unless you like are aware of it. Because there's been stuff that I've seen pop up. And then all of a sudden, I'll go to watch it because I didn't add it to my list. I thought, oh, it's right there. I'll watch it within a few days.
And it's gone.
And then it's gone. And I have to search for it and remember what it was.
Yeah, so Netflix, we need more tools to help find things. But yeah, so Black Panther. So I saw it with Julie. She really enjoyed it too. It had like cool art design, like on all the clothing and stuff like that. And it seems like they did like a cool meshing of like actual things from like African cultures. And like modern technology.
That part really appeals to me because I love different styles of futurism and technology. You know, like retrofuturism and all the different ways that, you know, just different aesthetics of, you know, the Mad Max type future. You know what I mean? Like when there's a very defined art style that is something original and kind of bold, but also doesn't seem like it's just a random sci-fi stuff. You know what I mean? Like if it has like a core to it. That's a very cool thing. So I'm really excited to kind of check that out and see what they did with that world.
Yeah, I mean, and too, like those Marvel movies, it's kind of hard to compare it to like say Thor Ragnarok, because Thor Ragnarok had like a comedic bent to it and had, you know, Jeff Goldblum talking about space orgies and Thor and Hulk and all that stuff. And then Black Panther had more like, within like the Kingdom of Wakanda, like more political stuff going on and family stuff and things like that. So it's a different tone completely.
Different experience.
Yeah, I mean, and you had a different type of villain. And because like the villain in Thor Ragnarok, her arc wasn't all that super interesting. It was just like, oh, I'm going to get revenge. And then Black Panther, the main villain, had more of a point of, these things happen. Like, I don't want to spoil anything. But it's just like the villain had a more compelling arc. And, at the end, like, if he had just went about it differently, he wouldn't really have been a bad guy. And that's the most interesting villains to me is like circumstances making someone the bad guy versus the good guy and things like that. So there are parts of it like that to me that are interesting. And like I said, the technology in it's cool. And then they have the Tolkien white guys in it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Martin Freeman and who else?
Andy Serkis.
Yeah, Andy Serkis.
Yeah, so you have Bilbo Baggins and Gollum in it. And then like I saw people complaining online like, oh, it's and of course it's like people who are like white nationalists or stuff like, oh, it's just a bunch of white guys are the villains and they're getting punched all over the place. And it's like, well, if there just happens to be a character in it that is, regardless of color, that's a bad guy, them getting hit's not really a surprise. And that's really not what the movie to begin with is. It's just like, come on, people, quit making these dumb hot takes to try to get attention. But yeah, the movie itself, like, it's one of those things where hopefully, in the future, more and more diverse voices getting to handle these big franchise films, because this does not feel like those other Marvel movies. And it has like a lot of the music in it is not, because like the Marvel movies, they have kind of forgettable scores.
Yeah, yeah.
And this one definitely is not, because there's a lot of, different parts of like rap and hip hop mixed in. And I know like Kendrick Lamar did the soundtrack for the movie. So there's a lot of stuff in there that just makes it have a unique feel.
Yeah, the soundtrack wasn't like almost an afterthought as far as, it being part of the world. Not just, hey, we can put this Marvel soundtrack in this Marvel film and it won't make a difference. That's how a lot of those soundtracks seem. Like you just scored a little bit differently and they fit a lot of the same movies, not all of them.
Yeah, because if you ask me right now to try to remember what anything from like Spider-Man Homecoming sounded like, I'd have a hard time remembering. Like Thor Ragnarok went in a different direction, like more of like the synthy stuff. And like, so just these Marvel movies having a more distinct personality and voice behind them is a good thing. I do ultimately wonder, like, at what point will the fatigue set in with all the superhero stuff? But I mean, like Black Panther didn't really play out like your typical superhero film because there wasn't like the, starting origin story, getting powers, blah, blah, blah. It didn't really do that.
Imagine if they would have had, if they would have just made 20 origin stories so far. You know what I mean? Like that would have been huge fatigue.
Yeah, but like I think a lot of this is jumping into the characters already having their powers works much better because you can give the backstory while still starting off with action.
Yeah.
And that just kind of breaks up the monotony of it. Yeah, but I enjoyed the movie a lot. Just beyond just the social aspects of it, I thought it was an enjoyable film in that it kind of gave you almost like futuristic Game of Thrones types elements because you have some, political intrigue type things, but in a city where there's like all this super futuristic technology, but then you still have elements of like, tribalistic breakdowns between like different groups. So it's stuff that's, gives you a different type of story, but then it's also, I'm trying to think of other examples of things that did that. Because like Altered Carbon is set like in the far future, but it does, doesn't feel that much different from like a Game of Thrones or something. So like I just like these shows where they take these different elements and it doesn't feel like guy gets power, uses power, uses the second act to figure out how to use it properly, then has to save someone. Like it wasn't like that. So I did like that aspect and I enjoyed the movie and I'd recommend checking it out if you've enjoyed any of those Marvel films.
Yeah, I'm excited to check that out. I'm glad it turned out well. And so, with people already dogpiling it for seemingly just racist reasons or stupidity.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things with Wonder Woman where you doubly want it to be good.
Yeah.
And like Ghostbusters was I liked it overall, but I could see people not really gelling with that film. But like between this and Wonder Woman, it's good to see this kind of being a middle finger, being like, look, the film is actually good.
Yeah.
Just shut up, enjoy it or don't.
It's
but
like,
there's no reason to pile on it. Like,
Well, too, like, at the end of the day, it's like you can shut down your garbage because these box office grosses aren't affirmative action or some garbage like that. These are people generally enjoying the movies and spending money to see it. Nobody's doing that just to prove a social point.
I saw that one. I keep seeing that one screenshot of that one theater that has every theater in the movie theater is Black Panther.
Yeah.
Every single screening was Black Panther, which is very, very cool.
Well, I know, like, when we were trying to figure out which one to see, I was looking at the theater, like, looking at all the options, and there are, like, 2 options are going back and forth, and then, like, it's the assigned seating ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And then one of the theaters is, like, one of those, like, 20-seat theaters or something. And I was like, not that one. So we went to the one that was, like, the next step up. So the bigger screen, because some theaters, like, when you have these new multiplexes, like, releasing, like, big movies, they have so many screens that a lot of times are held for, like, the end-of-run movies or the small stuff. But when they have the big movies on every screen, some of them are on these tiny-ass screens where there's, like, 30 seats in the theater. So it's like, avoid seeing it on those if you can, because it does look good to see on the big screen. There is a lot of visual things to take in. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Like, in terms of giving it a score out of 10, like, it's kind of hard to, like, sit there and, like, on your first watch give it a score. But I'd say it's towards the upper tier of, like, those one-off, like, standalone Marvel films. So, you know, like, more like a 9 or something like that out of 10. I need to watch it again at some point to kind of reassess it. But just seeing such different visuals and not being the, you know, same old type of superhero film was, to me, gave it a lot different edge. So, other things, like I said, so Altered Carbon I finished, that Netflix series. I don't know why that, like, with Cloverfield Paradox, I get why they put all the money behind that promotional ad on the Super Bowl, but by promoting Cloverfield Paradox and not Altered Carbon, which was their big multi-million-dollar series, like, it seems like they really undercut their show with the movie. I mean, I get that if you watch Cloverfield Paradox, it then shows, like, if you haven't watched Altered Carbon yet, it, like, once you finish the movie, it autoplays into the trailer for Altered Carbon. Yeah. But it just seems like a missed opportunity to promote
with
it
the Super Bowl. I mean, it's one of those things where, as somebody said, they turned this film that would have been, like, middling to maybe lower end box office success into an event after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That apparently had huge, you know, it's seemingly a lot of people were talking about watching it right after the Super Bowl. Like, you know, Altered Carbon, that would have been, even if it would have launched then, it would have been hard to be like, hey, watch the first episode. Like, people wouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? So I see it. It was kind of one of those, like, perfect little fit things. Yeah. Maybe Altered Carbon, they should have pulled it, you know, a couple weeks prior or a week after or something like that, maybe, to get away from Cloverfield. But because it is similar type, because I went to watch Altered Carbon and then I did kind of forget about it a little bit whenever the Cloverfield buzz was happening. Yeah.
So, like, the show itself I enjoyed. I mean, it does kind of have, like, the Game of Thrones in the future type feel, because, like, oh, there's a bunch of nudity and sex and a bunch of violence. So it does feel like those, like, the kind of template, but the philosophical things that go on it are interesting.
And is it a one big story arc, or does different episodes touch on different themes like Black Mirror, but as far as being in one world, like,
it's all mostly serialized storytelling. Because the main character is brought. So, like, I think I mentioned on the last episode, or that was when Derek was on, but, like, basically the concept is every person has, like, essentially, like, a hard drive that's, like, in their spine that's called their stack, which stores their consciousness. And if their body's destroyed, they can remove that and just put it into a different body, which is referred to as a sleeve. So basically, there's the elements of poor people can't afford to be re-sleeved and have their consciousness put in another body. So once they're dead, they're kind of screwed. And then if your stack is destroyed, you're just gone. So there's the element of that, and, like, the socioeconomic things that result from that. And then, like, the show, like, I mean, it's not really a spoiler. It's what the first episode's about. Like, there's somebody that's killed, and they bring this guy out of isolation. Like, his stack's been in the system in prison or whatever for, like, the past 250 years. They bring him back out and put him in a sleeve to have him figure out who murdered this guy. And it's like a super rich, like, wealthy aristocrat type guy. And then the really rich people, in addition to have enough money to transfer their stack to different sleeves, they have the money to afford cloud backup. So they can back up their consciousness to, like, a satellite that's off planet. And then even if somebody destroys their entire body and everything, they can still be brought back. From those backups.
A good way to easily recast the film if anybody gets too expensive.
yeah. I mean, and too, like, another social thing is, like, Joel Kinnaman, the guy who's, like, the main character. plays a character who was originally not a white guy. So it's Takashi Kovacs. So you have a character like a different ethnicity being put in Joel Kinnaman's body, and then there are some people that were kind of complaining about that. But like, I think the fact,
Ghost in the Shell syndrome.
yeah, but I mean, but this one at least had more of a point that the body they put him in had a specific purpose from the people who paid to have it done. So, but the show itself, I enjoyed it. We look forward to season 2. And the Netflix stuff, like that's upper tier, and from what I've heard, it's like one of their higher budgeted things. So I think it probably even had more budget than Stranger Things, just because of the amount of effects that were on display. Because the entire thing is like futuristic, hundreds of years in the future type stories. So it all looks really good. It doesn't really look like sci-fi or anything. It looks like big budget, serious series. So that was something I enjoyed and would recommend checking out.
Speaking of which, I'm looking forward to Westworld season 2.
Yeah, because there was the Super Bowl trailer. Didn't really show much, but
it's like I don't know if I watched that or if I did and it didn't show much. When is that coming out? Is that like
I think it's like in April.
Yeah.
So it'd be really cool if Westworld season 2 has Jurassic Park in it, since it's a Michael Crichton book or whatever. But
they can make a better Jurassic Park movie than they've made the past few times.
Yeah. Let's see. And then just other quick things. So I did watch. I'll group them together because. So I watched Victor Crowley and Mayhem. So the new movie from Adam Green and the new movie from Joe Lynch. They have I listen to their podcast, The Movie Crypt. So it's one of those things where you listen to people's like podcasts or shows or whatever, and you like people as their personalities, and people then like reviewing like their movies and stuff becomes like difficult because you're like, oh well, I still like the stuff.
Yeah.
Like Victor Crowley, I enjoyed it to some extent, but you can tell it was shot on a very limited time frame and on a low budget because it's mostly in one location. So it seems like one of those things that they put together and it all had to come together quickly. But I mean, if you want like the over the top kills, like they do those. So just kind of more in line with those later Friday the 13th films, kind of. But this one has a far more contained location than Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. So, I mean, for what it was, if you're a fan of that movie series, you'll enjoy it. But if you haven't watched any of those movies, or if you didn't enjoy the prior ones, I don't really see there being much to bring you into the 4th movie in a series. And it did, like, supposedly too, like the video on demand version has some stuff stripped out that's in the Blu-ray and DVD. So if you want to see, in separate instances, a set of breast and a penis, get the DVD or Blu-ray version.
Yeah.
Because I guess they decided to cut out nudity for some reason.
That's weird.
But yeah,
very hard to find on the internet. I see why they cut that out of the release.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, so if you're a fan of that series, then yeah, go ahead and check it out. I don't think it's enough. Those movies are still somewhat self-referential in the same way that a lot of stuff gets to be once you get multiple entries in.
I mean, it started out kind of that way for the most part.
Well, it started out. I mean, because it's like a horror comedy, but it's not like
I don't know. It's not really too satirical. Like it's trying to.
It's so over the top. That's the comedy. But if that rubs people the wrong way, then it's just the type of humor they use. Like I said, it's not like, I'm trying to think of like different examples of stuff like Shaun of the Dead, how like, the jokes were very much like about character-based things or situational things. And then these types of movies, like those movies are more like the joke is, somebody gets killed in a super over-the-top gruesome way. Like somebody gets their arm cut off, and then their other arm cut off, and their leg cut off, and then their other leg cut off, and then they get their head cut off, and they use the leg to hit the head or something like such over-the-top kill methods, or what's the joke more so. And there are some attempts at humor, but like just more like in that series, if you like the other movies, you'll probably enjoy it too, but it definitely feels like lower budgeted than the prior iterations. And then Mayhem has Stephen Yeun in it, and it's basically just in an office building, in a lawyer's office building. Stephen Yeun gets fired, and then they find out there's an outbreak of this virus or disease in the building that makes everybody go crazy and like injure others. And they put into place like a countermeasure that takes 8 hours to finally clear for everyone to be clear of whatever the infection is. And they're a lawyer firm that just worked on a case where the person got off for murder because of the virus. So they know that they have until those 8 hours when it's fully cleared that they can kind of get away with anything during that time period and get off legally. So it's him just then going back after the bosses that fired him and trying to get, to them within the next 8 hours. So it's like the Belko Experiment was another movie. Is like in an office building, people kill each other type thing. I haven't seen that yet. I mean, I think this one's a different concept behind it, as opposed to that one's just like you have to do it or else you die.
That one's like a battle royale situation. It seems like.
Yeah, and then this one was more of like, there's like a rage-inducing virus that. So it's like, are the characters really?
I mean, I understand the necessity for the single location stuff on a lot of films, but so many lower budget films just feel so restrained. And yeah, if you start blowing things out, then you cheapen maybe the overall value of it, or you have to lower the production value. But
yeah,
it's like so many films that are single location or small locations. Also, too, we have a huge influx of those. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you watch a lot of those, sometimes you're like, I just want it to be a little open. Like that's touching on the ritual.
Yeah.
That was mainly in the woods, but it didn't feel like it was constrained because of any sort of budget reasons. Like they actually did some interesting things with the woods and that too, like set design stuff.
And they weren't stuck in like a single barn or something.
Yeah, and it was also beautiful woods. It wasn't just woods that were there that they were able to use. Like I don't know, that film felt like it was, again, like I said, from a different era, because now a lot of like straight to video horror films and stuff like that, they all do feel very restrained. And that restraint, I think, sometimes comes through in kind of I don't know, how the film pays off and how much enjoyment you get out of it, because you do feel like you're not getting as much as you want out of it.
Well, I mean, and two, just like working on stuff like, we're working thoroughly, like trying to like a concept for a feature, and it's like, well, like when you're doing like stuff with no to low budget, you need to mostly base it on locations you have access to for the entirety of the shoot, in occasion you do reshoots. So I get why people do things in like smaller locations. Like with Mayhem, though, they did like multiple floors of the building, so it didn't feel as locked down because it still felt like a large space they were in. It didn't feel like I mean, some movies use that to like good effect, like 10 Cloverfield Lane is more of like a bunker, and that was to good effect. Some things it's just like, they're shooting in this house because that's cheaper. And then you can very much see that with Mayhem. They locked him in the building. And then too, you have like, they're all lawyers and it's like corporate, cutthroat corporate world type stuff. So at least that gives a little bit more setting the table for it to make sense. But yeah, like it had, like the gore in it wasn't anything over the top. There's just a little bit. And the action in it was cool. Like, overall it's like an enjoyable movie. Like it wasn't super like my style, in terms of how it was handled, but, like I did enjoy it some. Like between the two, like Victor Crowley and Mayhem, I probably enjoyed Mayhem more. And I think it's a more generally accessible film because it's not based on any other properties. And two, like Stephen Yeun was good in it. Because like he was on The Walking Dead as Glenn, and he was an Okja. Like he got more to do here than Okja. So it'll be interesting to see like what he does in the future, because I think he's a good actor and kind of like one of those good like everyman roles. And then it's just so like, cool seeing like, because like the show Walking Dead, like Glenn was a character that for a while was like well used and stuff like that, and it like kind of faded away, and then what happened in recent seasons. But like seeing him get work is cool because he's somebody that I like in everything I've seen him in. But
and that's on Shudder, right?
Yeah, it's on Shudder, and you can buy it on video as well.
I recently went to cancel Shudder just because saving money, and I think they offered me something like, hey, here's if you don't cancel, you get 3 months for free, or for $5 or 99 cents, something crazy. So by the way, if you have Shudder, or if you want to get a month and go cancel it, they'll probably offer you an extra few months or something like that. And I think that service has definitely gotten a lot better. It started out pretty decent, but they're doing a lot of original content, or at least acquiring some films exclusively, like Mayhem, where you could spend, $6 renting it or something, or you could just get a subscription to Shudder for a month for like $5 or whatever it is. Like,
and two, like Mayhem doesn't feel like some $100,000 budgeted movie that they acquired or did some original. It feels more in line with something, you know, that you could see from like a Netflix original. Like I have no idea what the budgets for those movies were, but it wasn't like some super tiny micro. I'm sure like it wasn't big budget, but sometimes you see stuff on streaming services and like, I mean, like Shudder is like a little bit newer, but like on Amazon Prime, like the problem with them is you have big budget stuff that's on there and they have like their Oscar, you know, nominees they purchase and push. And then they also have like a free-for-all system. Like we put our stuff's on Amazon Prime, like our short film. So there's no, as long as you don't have like graphic, full frontal nudity and essentially porn or, you know, hate speech or stuff like that, you can get your movies on there. So the problem like Netflix and like Netflix, you have to submit things to them and they curate it. So it's just interesting that these streaming services are like what type of content they're going after.
You know, you made me kind of possibly realize what they did with Victor Crowley. The reason the digital version maybe has some stuff cut out is maybe they want to push it to Amazon Prime
at some point.
And they thought, hey, if we do that, we'll play it a little bit safe. You know what I mean? That may be
some distributors just have weird things. Like some of them like,
but you would think the distributor of Victor Crowley
would know what they're going to get it.
Would not be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because apparently like the male nudity gag was just to like point out like how female nudity shows up for no point or no reason. But yeah, so yes, you can check all that stuff out. All that stuff's available now. That was all the stuff I watched.
So touching on Cloverfield real quick because I was not in on last week's because I was super busy. What did you guys end up thinking about that?
We gave it a 4 out of 10. Both of us did. I thought that, to me, the world building stuff they did was more interesting than the movie itself. And without like really spoiling it, the parts of it felt tacked on, and it felt tonally like it shifted. It's like, oh, right now it feels kind of like Event Horizon and Sunshine, which in and of themselves feel like each other. So it's like, oh, it kind of feels like those. Oh, now it kind of feels like here's a scene almost directly out of Alien. Oh, here's something from like Evil Dead 2. Here's something from here. And then it never actually went all the way to do anything that interesting. So it just kind of left you like, oh, this character went and 3D printed and made a gun and then went to use it for no real reason. And then nothing ever came of that.
Yeah.
So it felt like they put a lot of stuff at the wall.
It feels like that production was changed a lot in the, you know, after they finished shooting as they did and all that. Like you can feel that through the film. So the only thing I really want to say about it is I thought it was fine. I enjoyed it overall as something just to watch, you know, a cool little thing. Like obviously it doesn't hold up as much as the other two. But the thing I liked about this film, and the thing I think it kind of felt like, I don't know if this was intentional or not, it felt like a haunted house movie. Yeah. And I know people say Alien is that a lot too. But so most ghost stories, stuff like The Conjuring, I don't really believe in ghosts. So that some of that stuff is just, there's a distance there where I don't get that creeped out too much. You know what I mean? Like there's just always something there that stops me from being too in on it. I love sci-fi. So this felt like that. It's almost like there are sequences to, you know, that are scares coming throughout. Only these are science-based. Yeah. And I think for me is a little bit scarier. Like there is something that happens to somebody that just appears that I hadn't thought about before. So it's almost, I really like the beginning of that film or the first half when it seems like a ghost house. And instead of little scares happening, it is stuff happening, but it is through technology. Yeah. And it's a series of sequences. And I think that is a cool thing to do as far as taking that, I guess, format and applying it to this situation in space and replacing all the supernatural stuff with science-based stuff.
Well, the only thing to me is it felt like they had like the first half set up things and then the second half they did the most conventional things with it. Yeah. So it's like, oh, this stuff is kind of crazy. And then it felt like the ending was very conventional. So they didn't go further and make it truly terrifying or scary. No,
and two, I don't think the execution on a lot of those things that I'm talking about were home runs. Yeah. I just like the ideal of the concept of maybe where they were trying to go with that. I don't know if that was in their mind, but I really liked that it being like, okay, here's a series of things happening that would be in like a haunted house, but it is on a spaceship.
Yeah.
And it is not just creepy stuff. It is stuff that people are being killed or maimed due to weird science stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I liked that element.
It didn't feel like there was a lot of internal consistency. It's like, oh, somebody's inside the ship wall. The ship ate someone's arm. Or something.
and two, the characters, they're very much just stock characters, and even some of the humor, it was like they didn't even want to commit to it. Like there's like humorous lines, but it's like somebody whispers it over in the corner. Like I don't think the characters were handled that well at all.
Because they had Chris O'Dowd in it. He was in like Bridesmaids and IT Crowd and other things, and he had some good comedic beats, but not a lot.
But they didn't. Yeah, I don't think they. Yeah, that was not handled well, I don't think. But overall, I liked the film. But I would probably give it like a 6. You know what I mean? Like, I liked it more than I didn't like it. But it is a mess, and I wouldn't like. It was like an enjoyable film, just like you'd watch a bad 80s film where you're like, hey, overall I like this. I know there's a lot of things wrong with it, and some of it's a little goofy and mishandled, but overall, like, I like the experience.
Well, it does feel like a lot of the Cloverfield elements were just tacked on.
Yeah, you can totally see that. And also too, I thought it was going to kind of dive into something I've been thinking about as far as concepts for films, but they don't really. So part of me was like, okay, that's cool. They don't really do that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I was actually hoping they did and leaned into it, and it would turn out really well. But it's funny too. I also watched X-Files, and one of the episodes also kind of leans on the concept I was thinking about too. That kind of fits into the Cloverfield paradox. But also like those last 3 episodes of X-Files. But that is it Dylan Morgan?
Or Darren Morgan.
Yeah. That episode
the
was,
Lost Art of Forehead Sweat.
That episode was ace.
Because I feel like most of his episodes, if you've watched some of the X-Files here and there, you haven't really kept up the entire show. Like, I feel like the Darren Morgan episode, you can just kind of pick up and watch without watching the rest of the show around it and get what the intended meaning out of it is. It's essentially knowing that you have Mulder and Scully. Mulder's the believer. Scully's a skeptic. If you just kind of know those basic things, you can watch mostly all of his episodes and get enjoyment out of them.
Yeah. So last season he did was it Weremonster?
Yeah, Mulder and Scully meet the Weremonster.
Yeah, so he did that episode, and that was phenomenal, my favorite episode of that season. But this season, this feels more almost substantial to the lore, even though it is a bit throwaway on some levels.
Yeah.
It also feels very much steeped into like kind of trying to be a little bit more quote unquote significant.
Yeah.
Even though it's not taken seriously at all.
Yeah.
I like that it kind of touches on some things about Mulder and Scully on a larger scale.
Yeah.
Almost. There's a lot of things about the episode I really, really loved. Let me see here. Sorry, I got to look at my notes. I saw The Phantom Thread. Had a terrible experience in theaters. Did I tell you about that?
No.
AMC.
Wasn't it like where something messed up on the audio?
Yeah, the audio was so jacked up. And it was AMC Stony Brook, which AMC recently took that over. And I don't think that theater has improved since they've taken over. I'll just say that much.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not putting money into it now. I don't know. Things like prices go up, which I expect. But it was like the last day they were showing it there. And the speakers were terrible. I think they were like blown out. But because of my time and it's hard to get to the movies, like I didn't want to walk out. And then I think Baxter was the only other place going to be showing it.
Yeah.
So Baxter has small screens too. So, but I super enjoyed that film, Paul Thomas Anderson. So you kind of know what you're getting. I was listening to a podcast recently from the writer of Jigsaw. He was on this screenwriting podcast I listened to called On the Page. Yeah. And he was talking about, he wrote a book based on a series he was trying to pitch. And, he was saying the difference between writing a book and a movie is a movie you're waiting for the thing to end. Like you want to see, how is this going to play out? How's it going to finish? With a book, you don't want it to be over because you want to just like live in that world. Yeah. And he said, I had to realize that when I was writing this novel. And it kind of made me think about Paul Thomas Anderson's films. I think that's the difference. And that's where the cutoff where some people may enjoy them. That this isn't a film where you should be waiting for the point, or a lot of his films aren't. Yeah. It's almost like you just like enjoy living in the world. And that's very much how Phantom Thread is. Like, don't be waiting for, plot point. Somebody referred to it as like a post Hitchcockian film where it is not about the twist
Yeah, the
or
story.
the setup and payoff really too much. It very much is about this world that he has constructed, and it has some things they thematically touch on that I really enjoy. But it is an experience you kind of just want to live in because of one, it's beautifully shot. The music is phenomenal. It's mostly scored throughout, so that at least helps with the speaker situation because there was music. Like when there was quiet parts, it was like a loud hiss.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of music throughout. The acting is, of course, phenomenal. Daniel Day-Lewis. And I can't remember there's essentially 3 leads, but they're all phenomenal. So I super, super enjoyed that film. It's about him being a dressmaker,
Yeah.
So maybe like look up a little bit about the film before you watch it. I'm sure people have probably seen about it, but it's definitely one of my favorite films of the year, and definitely one I'm absolutely going to buy and probably watch several times over because I really, really enjoy his films. And then I also watched, piggybacking off the Oscars, is Lady Bird. We didn't get to go see that either, so that's available to streaming, and Nicole bought that yesterday, so we watched that.
Lady Bird.
Enjoyed it quite a bit. For me, I wouldn't have said, "Oh, that's definitely going to be nominated for a Best Picture."
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. I like Greta Gerwig, so I'm glad that turned out well. She's not in the film, but you kind of know her personality a little bit, and it's fun. This is a story she wrote and directed based on her life.
One, two, connected to horror. She was in House of the Devil.
Yeah, House of the Devil. Mm-hmm. So, it's a very good film. Super enjoyed it. I think it's available to rent next week. We just went ahead and bought it though, but there's a bunch of Oscar stuff popping up now that you can rent next week and you can buy now, like Darkest Hour. Florida Project's been up for a while. So there's a bunch I want to check out, but that gets expensive.
Yeah.
And then, that's pretty much it.
All right, so we move into our review of The Ritual, which is the movie that's available now on Netflix. And we'll start off without spoilers and then kind of hold the spoilers for the end. Because this is a movie I think you can spoil. Because like sometimes we talk about things and it's like, oh, you really can't spoil this movie too much. Like, like Victor Crowley, you can't really spoil that movie too much. I mean, aside from saying like these specific characters have things happen, like what you're going to get. With this movie, I really had no idea what it was going to do. The synopsis for it is a group of college friends reunite for a trip to the forest, but encounter a menacing presence in the woods that's stalking them. And it's from David Bruckner. And then it has some faces that you've seen in other things. So I'll probably pronounce these incorrectly. Is it Rafe Spall?
That looks right to me.
Is the lead character. So you've seen him in like Edgar Wright stuff.
He's one of the Andys, Detective Andys in Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, and then he was, I believe he was Sean's coworker in Shaun of the Dead at the electronics store.
He was in The World's End briefly and Prometheus.
Yeah, he was the dude that had the clear glasses.
Mm-hmm.
So he is the one who...
You've seen that dude around.
Yeah, you've seen him in other things.
But he's essentially the lead in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have him in it. You have different actor, like a few other people I've seen in other things. Like the one guy, there's a character in it, Hutch in the movie. And I was trying to remember what he's from. And apparently he's an actor that was also in Downton Abbey, is Thomas Barrow. So I was like, where have I seen him at? And it's like, oh.
I need to tell Nicole about that because she's watched that show, but she didn't recognize anybody, even the guy that's been in Hot Fuzz and everything, even though we've watched that film a million times and Prometheus and all that. So
yeah, so just the very basic outline of the movie, just beyond what the synopsis was, is, a group of friends is talking about what they're going to do, and then one of them suggests they should go hiking in some area, like, like in Sweden and somewhere else, and then two of the friends decide after they get done at the bar or whatever, their other friends have, like, wife and kids, so they're going home, so the other two decide they're going to stop at a liquor store and get something to drink and then continue partying. When they go in, I think maybe just say some bad things transpire. Yeah. And it inspires a trip. Yeah, just like something happens to, like, out of all the friends, something happens to one of them, so they decide to go through the trip just like in their honor. So, I mean, that's really all you need to know about the movie. And then they go to the woods, and then shit happens. So,
yeah.
Like, the other thing, too, is, like, saying, like, when I was watching this, like, the first half hour or whatever, I was like, oh, so this is giving me a lot of what I think, like we said earlier, what people wanted from the new Blair Witch or The Witch or something like that. It's like, oh, cinematically shot. So that's what the Blair Witch didn't do. And it's like they go into the woods and it starts off looking very good. And, they do effectively just make the scenery creepy in the woods. And, they have the dynamics between all the characters get fleshed out a little bit more. Because essentially all you really know is like one character starts, has this mindset, and then these other characters like, oh, I have kids and a wife. So you kind of have that dynamic, but you find out more about the inner workings of the dynamics between the group. And, somebody, like twist their ankle, so they decide to take a shortcut back instead of going the long way around, which would take like an entire day or something. So they decide to take a shortcut. And as always, with shortcuts.
Surprise, it was a mistake.
Yeah. So then, they go through the woods and they find very creepy things. And there's some very effective sequences. Like I said, without like just high level discussion without spoiling, like to me, a lot of these movies come down to you have like the first and second act that start a lot of the scares, and then the third act reveals what the source is. And then that third act can hinge, like the movie hinges on that third act, is whether or not somebody hates it, loves it, or is, just okay on it. And with this movie, like I just always like to go through and read the IMDb user reviews and read like different reviews from places other than just critics to see what general people say. Because it's surprising to me the number of movies that I'll watch and think, oh, that was pretty good. And then go read the reviews, and then on IMDb it has a bunch of 1 out of 10s. And not a movie where it seems to be like a coordinated, like, oh, we hate this, let's destroy it. But just people who watch the movie, it seemed like they enjoyed it for like, if it's a 90-minute movie, it seems like they enjoyed it for 85 minutes. And then like the last 5 minutes, like, nope, trash, worst thing I've ever seen.
Piss people off, and then that'll just turn them on a film.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that's the fatal flaw in making a film. Well, not say it's the fatal flaw, because you make the film you want to make, and if that's what you want to do it. Make the film you want to make. But as far as audience members, if you're trying to make an audience-driven film, sometimes there can be one thing, and you can have most of the audience turn on you and color the rest of the film.
Yeah, because like even on our own stuff, I've seen where somebody, very small thing, somebody's like, yeah, I enjoy most of it, but this one thing made me hate it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't get that mindset, because there are a few things where I'm trying to think of recent memory where I've watched something and it's like, oh, I enjoyed it up to this point, and then I really hated it. Like The Open House. It was a movie that, had some problems, but it was mostly enjoyable up until the end. But once the ending happened, it went from like, oh, this is moderately entertaining to mediocre to being like, well, this ending was so terrible. It just makes the entire thing. But like, so this movie has like interspersed like characters like reminiscing or remembering certain events. Like a lot of movies do that, like characters think about things, like what's real, what's in the movie. And it has stuff like that kind of wrapped into more traditional scares. And you have characters in the woods and people, obviously conflict is introduced by being stuck in the woods. And it's like the character dynamics became more pronounced. And then, once again, just high level, like there is a creature design. This isn't just a see nothing movie. Like you will see something. So I think that type of element gives a lot of people what they wanted, because I've seen different people state like, this is what I've wanted out of a horror film. And a lot of people say this like, oh, this is on my early like top 5 horror movies of the year already.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
this, for the right audience, this film, I can see why people are saying, hey, this is 10 out of 10. Like,
yeah,
I really enjoyed it. I don't, maybe, I don't know what I'm going to score it really, but I think this is, again, just like some films like The Witch or It Comes at Night, where it strikes a chord with certain audience members.
Yeah.
The general, maybe what you think as far as the horror audience. Yeah. This film seems to probably like it's going to be striking a chord with them. A very, the core base. I
think that it does. I think the tightrope that it walks is that it does some of those things that we would associate with like quote unquote prestige horror that critics like, but then it also has actual things happen in it that would satisfy some of the fans. Because it is interesting to me when I think expectations a lot of times set movies up to fail with hardcore horror fans. Because like The Witch got, Stephen King said it's the scariest movie of the year or something to that effect. I don't know if he said that, but he just talked about being scary. The critics talk about being scary. It's a lot of festival buzz. It follows too. And then it comes out and a lot of the fans are like, no blood, sucked.
Yeah.
Wasn't. And then like the key thing to me is everybody says, oh, this wasn't scary. And it's just interesting. Like, so do people who consistently watch like horror movies really find them scary? Because for the most part, I don't find many things scary anymore. It's just suspenseful.
Nicole, we were talking about, I don't know, the situation in the film, like there's a place they're at and, like, would you do this? They challenge somebody to do something a little creepy in the film. And I was like, yeah, I would do it. And I was like, would you? She was like, no, I wouldn't even think about it for a second. She was like, talking about, she's like, what would scare you to where you wouldn't? And she was like, and I said something like, are you scared right now? Because she doesn't like jump a lot watching films at home. Like she basically doesn't have much of a reaction, watching horror films. And she's like, yeah, I'm tense right now. She's like, I'm always tense when I watch, horror films. And even though she's not super into something, she still gets really ratcheted up and tense. And I didn't even hardly realize that. Like for me, it's just like basically no reaction. Yeah. But this film, there was at least a couple moments where it was like, oh, whoa, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like this film jolted me a little bit a couple times. But yeah, I don't know what. That's all subjective, being scared, I think.
Yeah, so I see that description thrown around a lot in regards to horror movies, and people are like, oh, It Follows wasn't scary at all. And it's like, well, the thing to me is like, what is scary to you then? And then, because that's always the thing, is like whenever people review horror movies and they're like, oh, wasn't scared at all. It's like, well, what does scare you? And then they'll say the things they're scared about, and it's like, really?
Yeah.
You were really scared by the haunting of blah, 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 or... the possession of blah, blah, blah. It's like, so there's things that scare you. Like, and then you also have the people that just complain like, oh, I hate these James Wan jump scare fest.
Yeah.
And I hate this and I hate that. It's like, well, if you hate everything that makes these movies elicit reaction, like what do you truly find scary? Yeah. And that's something that I always have trouble with. Like when I read like the user reviews, to me, almost no movie is scary. The only thing to me that ever is scary is when a movie lingers with you and you walk outside to take the trash out and then you're, looking over your shoulder and you're thinking about it. To me, that's the sign of like an effective movie that puts you in that mindset, makes you think about things in your life. And
that, yeah, I mean, honestly, that feeling right there is one that doesn't come a whole lot, but when it does, it's awesome. And like probably a very long time ago, maybe when I was in college, I was writing a short film and it was about somebody who had just saw a scary movie and the feeling that evokes afterwards at nighttime. Because that is like the one thing that can be creepy. Is maybe not necessarily even the film itself, but the after effects of it. Sometimes when you're in a different situation and you're kind of feeling the, the aftertaste of that film. Yeah. In relation to you, whatever situation you're currently in. Like, I think that is a very cool thing sometimes.
Yeah, so it's just like a lot of times when I hear people talk about, oh, this was so scary, it's like I always take that with a grain of salt. Because to me, the most tense or the most response I've had to things are when I have like a sense of dread of what's going to happen to a character that I'm attached to. And that mostly to me in recent years has come from like TV shows. Like I'll watch something and just have like a sense of dread about like what's going to happen, and then that gets me entertained and gets me like invested in it. So it's not that it's scary, it's just that it's tense.
So I just had an idea. We should probably think about this. I'll just go ahead and say it here because if somebody steals it, that's fine. It's not like you can't do it you replicate this. Is a haunted house experience where every year you make a new short or a couple series of them of like a 20-minute short, and the haunted house is designed around that. So at first people go in, like say, it's almost like the simulation rides. You wait in line, you go into the theater, you watch this 20-minute story and experience, and hopefully it creeps people out enough, and they go through the haunted house that is designed around that. That would heighten the haunted house experience. Like that would be a cool thing that would be worth paying for. You know what I mean? Like one, it would fund the making of that short film, and two, the people would be getting something that they wouldn't get out of all the other haunted house experiences, and it would extend it too. Because sometimes you go to a haunted house and you're like, I paid $45 and that was 15 minutes. Like that would be kind of a cool thing to do, or people could choose to skip the movie part. Like I think that would be a fun project.
Yeah, because like with those haunted houses now, you have a lot of your traditional haunted houses where you just go in and people jump out at you and say boo and bah, and you wait in line in October and that's kind of it.
And it's cool when they have stories throughout. So that's why you would continue that story through the haunted house.
Because it feels like there's a disconnect. So you have like those, you have like haunted hayrides, and more like child-oriented type things. And then you have like these extreme haunted houses. There's that one documentary, I forgot what it's called, that was on Netflix about like current haunted houses, and they spent a bit of time talking about the McCamey Manor. And that's a place where it's like you live out a Saw film. Like you go in, it's like 8 hours, there's no safe word, you can't make them stop. They do like background checks on you before and like make you do like health evaluations before you go in. And they'll like...
That's like a night at Corey Higdon's house.
Yeah.
Well, there's safe words.
There's a part where they put people in a tank that has like eels in it, and they put a padlock on the top, and you're just stuck with just enough air to like stay at the top and like hold on to the cage.
Yeah.
And you're in there for as long as they want you to, and then they'll like make you like vomit and then eat the vomit and force you to eat like gross like shit and just stay chained up in a room as they pour like pig's blood on you and stuff. So just
humans are weird characters, man. Humans are weird.
So like people pay for stuff like that, and then you have those other experiences like the extreme haunts where people like point guns at you and tie you up, and ones where people like will get naked and touch you. And so you have all these weird experiences, but building a haunted house that was trying to instill a theme when you went into something, and to, evoke feelings and, fears, and then to play those up in the real world. Like, that type of stuff would be interesting to see how that works. But, like,
You have the same set designers for the film working on the haunted house to make it all feel like one project.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like, but the ritual, like, to bring it back to that, like, the movie itself, like, if I was going to go out in the woods immediately after that, then there would probably be some more like thought that went into like what was in the woods,
camping overnight. Yeah,
because there's a scene where they find like an old tent and camping supplies and stuff that just made me think of like, oh, what happened to the people that camped before? Yeah, and so there's a lot of elements like that I think that it does relatively effectively.
It's that general feeling of isolation that, again, Alien. What was so good about Alien? It was a foreign environment. For that type of film, but it was that general feel of isolation and helplessness and being lost that like most every human fears because there's not much you can do about it, and that's the thing that happens in a lot of films set in woods, but they do it very effectively in this film, I think. And it's just, I think a lot of the things they did maybe aren't even that new. It's a lot of blending of a lot of different things, but it's the right concoction, and they're all handled very well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and two, like I said, so I think that this is, because like I said, I've seen people talk about how this was what they wanted out of horror films. So I think what this does is it blends the elements of prestige horror. So going for themes deeper than simply person dies, person gets killed in some gruesome way, creature, blah, blah. So it goes beyond just those base level things and has more of the underlying story elements. So I think it probably has, to me, like more in common with It Comes at Night than Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
But then it still delivers some of those elements that people come to expect out of it after having built up to it. So then it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't leave you with blue balls. Because, like, I think like us, like we're more fine with like horror movies that go off in different directions. But to a lot of the audience, like It Comes at Night has a lot of 1 out of 10 reviews because, this was one I expected.
And me, I want variety. Like, I don't want every film to be It Comes at Night and The Witch. But I also don't want every film to be Friday the 13th. You know what I mean? Like, or Victor Crowley. Like,
there's a mix.
Yeah, I like this mix. And this film is almost like a good mix of those. And also, too, this film it plays it in the middle, sort of.
Yeah.
As far as blending those. And it does a lot of things. I don't want to say it plays it safe at all, but also don't want to, like, a million films just like this. This almost feels like the horror equivalent of a Marvel film. Like, it has got some, it's well written, it's well structured, but it also delivers on some things you maybe expect, and it doesn't alienate the audience too much. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I like Marvel films, but this is almost like the Marvel film of recent horror, I think. Like, easily digestible by a vast audience.
Yeah, so it has like it does kind of like a tightrope walk of delivering kind of, more unnerving type content, and scares or situations, and then also having more traditional sequences of, something actually happening. So, like, I know too, like, continuing to like kind of creep around like the spoilers, like I guess we can give like the review, then do the spoiler discussion. So like giving this movie a score out of 10, like where do you think you land on that?
I don't know. I mean, like I really enjoyed it. It's nothing that's like, you know, this isn't something that I'm thinking about a long time afterwards, like something like Phantom Thread or even The Killing of the Sacred Deer. You know what I mean? Like that film, for some reason, I was thinking about that a lot afterwards. Like I'm still thinking about the film at some point. But it also something that I'm not going to forget about as quickly as something as like a straight genre film that is, well, you know, just enjoyable in the moment. And that's it. Like I would probably at least give it a 9, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think I can go to a 10 on this, but also I have no faults with it. Like and it actually does some things that, maybe you don't expect because it does go places. So I don't know, at least a 9. Yeah. I would think.
Yeah, like I'm probably gonna be like a little bit lower because I still enjoyed it, but like after it ended, it didn't leave me with like a huge impact. Like because some things like It Follows, that movie, like once it ended, it was more of just thinking about like, oh man, the story, like, so how would this work if you did that? Like, what if you did this? And I think a lot of times the movies immediately the biggest impact are the ones that kind of open up ideas. And that movie, like it kind of comes full circle and ends. And then it's like more of a contained situation that doesn't have as many implications beyond that.
It's a good ride throughout and a good experience. But it's pretty much that. It's an experience. Again, nothing you're going to live with a whole lot.
So like I would say like, and it's kind of hard to score it because I kind of like, like maybe like a 7 out of 10. Like I enjoyed it and I'd recommend it on Netflix. And two, sometimes too, like I always wonder like, is it grading on a curve when you review streaming service releases? Because one, you didn't pay out of pocket specifically to watch it because it's on a streaming service. It's already part of money you pay for other things. So does that make it seem as if a better deal? But then you're also watching it at home on the small screen versus the big screen. So you don't have the benefits of a movie theater, which is like big screen, fully immersed sound, dark room, no interruptions. But then you also don't have the possible interactions with like screaming kids or bad theater patrons, or as you experience with Phantom Thread, bad sound that you can't fix.
Yeah. Well, also too, if you do have kids, you do deal with screaming kids. At home.
So
I had to pause this film many times, mainly because of my dogs. And we have a kid and stuff. We had to like put her to bed before we finished it. So I did break up the experience. So it does change things, like you mentioned. But but I'm also thinking about, okay, where would I rank this last year on last year's films? Like it would be up there. Like, you know what I mean? Like I loved Get Out. I liked It a lot, and Killing the Sacred Deer. And I can't think of another one that, like, I can't remember my top 5, but this would probably come in right underneath those.
Well, and this is one too where like I'll probably rewatch this at some point and then try to reevaluate. Because like when you're talking about like top 10 of the year, so this year, you have some stuff like Halloween and other things in October.
And The Ritual, I didn't even know this film was coming.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like until like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's kind of like a smaller like festival thing that you got acquired by Netflix and got released. So like what other surprises will there be like this?
But comparing it to last year is the only thing I can do right now. And it was, for me, it was the top tier of last year because it was kind of something I wanted. You know what I mean? This kind of satisfies a lot of things. So
so I guess that we'll wrap up our non-spoiler discussions. If you're listening to the podcast via iTunes, you can leave a review there. I can't talk. You can leave a review there. That'll help other people find the podcast. And if you're listening or watching via YouTube, you can leave comments. We always enjoy seeing comments there and feedback. And two, just letting us know what you thought of the movie. Because like some people have said, like on our last episode, somebody mentioned what they felt about the Cloverfield movie, that they were in line with what me and Derek had said about it. So it's always interesting to us just to see what other people's thoughts are on the movies. And then we also have the email. So if you're listening via just iTunes or podcast service, you can send us an email at podcast@housebyvegasstore.com. So we always look for any feedback there, and we will read it out on the podcast if you send us something.
Does that automatically get funneled to our normal email account?
Yes.
You've been checking that?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's been sent.
I haven't checked it in a while. That's what I always forget to.
Yeah, I have everything. I have it all set up under my Gmail account in the same mail app. So.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We all have access to that account, so
yeah, we have
sure
like
somebody was checking it.
We have like a few like admin accounts or something that just emails it to everybody when you send like the email. But yeah, so then also you can just follow us on housebyvegasstore.com. Find links there to all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. So you can find links there to everything and find all the stuff we're putting out. Then if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at William Caps.
And I'm at Blevin Sean. I had to think about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, just follow us or
Yeah,
HBTVS _ official. That's where we post, like, stuff about upcoming podcast and things like that. And I'm going to start trying to post more, like, pictures of, like, prepping for short film stuff or gear or things, just things that are just more interesting and trying to get more stuff posted. But
Social media is hard.
yeah, especially you get busy at, like, work or,
Yeah.
you know, with life.
I have a business account too, and I haven't like posted anything of that in like months. Like I'm
Yeah.
always like, I had like 2 shoots last week.
Yeah.
Didn't post any picture. You know what I mean? Because I'm like
You just get busy.
working, and I'm not in that mindset. The younger generation will probably be ingrained in that mindset of like, hey, promote my stuff through social media, and they will be rock stars at it. But yeah.
But like when you're stuck being busy, like it's like especially like on some of our short film stuff, like we just haven't had time to really sit. Not having a dedicated person just to do pictures, you're busy, and then you barely take time to think about taking pictures of other stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, so
we barely have enough people. We don't have enough people to even run a crew. So
yeah, our crew has been on the last was it so one on the last 3 or 4 things. The crew's been like 3.
Well, on some of them you've shot major segments by yourself.
Yeah, like on what was it Twin Trees?
Yeah.
There's like all the stuff
I
in
only
the
helped on
woods.
one thing.
Yeah, all the stuff in the woods is me just holding an iPhone handheld and then try and warp stabilizer to clean it up a little bit, and then be like, I wish I had a tripod when I was there, because we just kind of came up with in the moment to like, oh, let's make a short film while we're here, or just shoot some footage and see what we can do with it. And then I shot stuff with Julie like at her apartment, just me with just like a couple of lights, and then you helped when we did like the quote unquote red room scene here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we don't have a ton of crew to actually sit there and think about taking pictures of stuff. But yeah, so the ritual. So spoiler discussion for the ritual.
Go
so
watch it on
yeah, go
Netflix.
watch it on Netflix before you listen to
Because
spoilers.
this is a good one. You don't want to get spoiled on it.
So the element throughout. So the beginning part when the characters are at the liquor store and I forget his name. So Luke, like when he sees his friend die, like throughout the movie, like him like seeing like the liquor store and like going towards things and seeing parts of it. I was like, so this has to be like, you know, like a huge narrative thread throughout the entire movie. And then it's him coming to terms with what happens that determines like his fate. And then you find out that when they're in the woods, that there's kind of like a small cult of people that have been found by like a Norse god that grants them long life if they, I guess, produce ritual sacrifices to him. And the only people that they give opportunities to join are those that have like deep sorrow or sadness or guilt, which is why the main character Luke is not killed by them, and he's, you know, offered to join their group. Because when the creature like attacks him, it marks him, and then like later when they're like in this barn or house type thing in the basement, they're chained up. The woman who looks kind of like the leader or the ritual leader or
She's the witch in the
priest or
credits.
the or the witch, she shows like she has those same marks. So it shows like the creature marks people that it thinks is, you know, that can join it and that would serve its
And
purpose.
that whole thing felt very Resident Evil 4 to me.
Yeah.
With the, you know, the almost the zombie-like state of a lot of those people and stuff.
Yeah.
And even like walking around with axes. Like, I really like that. And I wonder if they were all inspired by that. And Resident Evil 4 obviously was inspired by a lot of different things. But
Yeah.
I just wonder if that was all taken from that.
So I think to me, the thing that ultimately made the movie not be like a 9 or 10 out of 10 or something like that is that the setup in the woods stuff, like the little house they find in the woods with like as you mentioned earlier, the little like statue at the top or the sculpture that they try to dare their friend to sleep in front of, like the setup in that place was incredibly creepy. And then like when they wake up the next morning and they're all disheveled and all this stuff happened, that to me set like a very, you know, tense tone.
It almost felt like that was like the end of the Blair Witch.
Yeah.
But you got to see what happens after that, you know, if nobody
Yeah.
died.
Yeah, so that feels like the Blair Witch, and then the stuff after that, when you find out that it's like a Norse god and all that, to me that doesn't necessarily elevate things because it gives an explanation that does have narrative satisfaction to it and does have narrative purpose in terms of like, oh, the main character having like the sense of sorrow and regret and sadness is what made him not get killed by the creature and made him be something that the creature wanted to join his, you know, following. Like all of that gave it narrative closure and made sense story-wise, but just to me there was more interesting things that could have been the purpose behind it. And so that's not really the fault of the movie. It's just there's different ways it could have gone.
Yeah, it's preference too. Like for me, watching this, I was thinking, oh, I really like I like monster movies. Like,
Yeah.
Again, I love the host for a million different things besides the creature in it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that is a masterfully made film, but also just like the creature. And this felt like that. Like, oh, cool. It's a new good creature design that's handled well. I think it looks really cool and really good. But this is in a different setting. It's a different feel. It's not, this isn't Godzilla or something. It's
and two, I like double-edged sword. So the ending that they did give you, kind of takes them to like a village, and there's like villagers, like you said, they're almost like zombie-like. There's only really one of them that speaks English to communicate with him like directly. Like that was more satisfying than them just running around the woods and getting picked off one by one, for sure. It's just I think that, and two, the ending with like him getting away, like, essentially like burning the house down and all those creepy like dead bodies that were still kind of alive.
That was really awesome.
Yeah, that was very
that
effective.
Was phenomenal, I think.
Yeah, so then him like
that was a very memorable scene that if this was made 20 years ago, people would be, thinking, oh, that was a cool scene from that movie.
Well, because you just didn't know where it was going to go.
Yeah.
Like, were they going to attack him
that felt like a very video game thing too, where they just start moving barely and then he just starts burning them.
And then he sets the house on fire, and then he like shoots the guy and gets out. And shoots the creature and gets chased down and is able to use like the axe to like temporarily like stop it.
And he's given the chance to bow down a couple times. Like, he does once and then gets up and then it pushes him down.
Yeah, because the creature's like, join me, you bastard.
Yeah.
And then he eventually manages to get through the tree line and see, the resort and the trail and everything. And it seems like the creature's kind of stuck in a specific area.
I thought maybe that was Norway, and he did not want to cross international borders because
he doesn't have a visa or a passport. But yeah, I think that it was just kind of like this specific forest area he was relegated to. And you would think that at some point that if enough people went missing in a specific place, they would be able to search it. But maybe there's like the magic thing where they can't see it.
Yeah.
And it only really shows it only reveals what's really the truth of that location to people that it wants to make part of the sacrifice.
Another thing about the setup is that, people talked about a lot of Friday 13th and horror films, like, oh, if people do something bad, like have sex or smoke weed, and they get punished, Well, this is almost like him not helping out his friend and being like a coward, brought this punishment on him and all of his friends around him. You know what I mean? Like that was almost the through line of this, where that single event was he had to face the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
But another thing about the end, I was wondering how this film was going to end, and some movies people are like, oh, everybody just died, and sometimes I'm okay with that, but the thing I thought it might do is that, maybe he was going to be taken and become one of those people, because that is another way to end, I think, a horror film that is also effective. As there's different options. There's either the character dies, the character gets away, but sometimes a very interesting way to end it is if the character has to suffer a fate that is worse than death. You know what I mean? Like something like that.
Well, and two, if there's the idea that there's forces at play that you really can't stop, and that you're forced to just succumb to it and become part of this world that you want to know part of.
Yeah, that I think that sometimes that's a creepier, unsettling ending. Like him getting away, I was totally fine with it.
Yeah.
But the ending doesn't rocket the rest of the film. It's just he gets away. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a simple solution.
Yeah, because I think that, if the ending had just been he goes through the ritual and it shows like 100 years later and he's more like the rest of them, like that's one type of ending that I think probably would have been less satisfying to people. But I mean, part of it is like overcoming his guilt for what happened to his friend is, he does take action in this instance, but, it's after all his other friends have died.
Yeah. Too little, too late.
Yeah. So I mean, but like in that one, there's literally nothing that any of them could have done to save any of the others in these woods.
Just heavy Blair Witch vibes throughout, and I loved that because I loved Blair Witch when it came out. Yeah. And this is almost the ideal of seeing that more fully realized, I think.
Yeah, just because it was narratively told, it wasn't shot from first person shaky cam or first person drone and ear cam and DSLR and night vision trail cam,
and I love all the surreal or supernatural, whatever you want to call it, elements of dressing the woods with the shelves of the convenience store. Like I love that. Like they're using the woods, but again, just from a production design and think about budgetary reasons, like they're spending a little bit of money to make
it
this
look
a different place. You know, this isn't just a set in the woods. Like they did some cool things that fit in with the characters and his psyche and everything that was happening. I really, really loved that element to it. And beautifully looking film too.
Yeah.
You know, even though it's probably moderate budget. I just think it was really, really awesome, kind of all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, to me, is just basically what I would have wanted out of the new Blair Witch that came out a couple years ago.
Exactly.
And then just not like, so this delivered what I thought you'd get out of that and gave a more satisfying conclusion. I mean, sometimes it's better for you to not know what happened, but like I remember reading like early, like without like spoilers, like reviews, someone's like, oh, it's kind of like the Blair Witch Project meets the Wicker Man meets something else. And they're like, well, yeah, I can kind of see the Wicker Man elements of like the sacrifice stuff. And then the Blair Witch is people stuck in the woods and, you know, the infighting that will break out when stuff that's creepy happens.
I also heard The Descent a little bit.
Yeah, The Descent, because it's the all-male version of The Descent.
Yeah, but then I also was thinking The Descent, the women are in a cave and dealing under a lot stressful situations when the guys are just in the woods with a little broken ankle and they're falling apart.
Yeah, there's a character that's like more gravely injured. And then you have like multiple creatures. So like it does all kind of, you know, like to The Descent, I would say it does have a similar-ish feel and like character has trauma. The rest of the characters go out and like the character that experienced the trauma has to use that in the situation.
And also a British film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because all the people in it, I think, were British, like the main character and David Bruckner.
I'm talking about The Descent.
Oh, The Descent, yeah. The Descent was Neil Marshall.
Yeah.
And then this one, too, you know, felt like they had a more European cast than... And two, like, that does just give it a different feel.
Yeah.
I mean, but it wasn't like they're sitting there, like, with Cockney. It's like, hello, governor.
But it was nice. You know, I just... Again, I don't know. I just watched so many, like, independent American films, horror films, that all just seem to kind of fit in a lot of the same mold. You know what I mean? The same tone, the same mold, they do the same thing with the budgetary restrictions, but there's a lot of good films out there.
Well, and two, like this movie, just like regardless of whether or not it works for you or not, it is a horror film that aspires for a little bit more.
Yes.
So that is honorable, and you know it's an attempt, whether or not it connects or not. Just like it wasn't just a bloodbath in the woods. There was other stuff going on that connected it to like Norse mythology. So that stuff I all, you know, applaud doing that. And that does give it, what I think will be more staying power than just people running around the woods getting killed by an unseen monster.
And the creature design, I think, was awesome. Like, that is a very cool creature. And it being like an upside-down person or something with their arms. Like, I love the creature design.
Yeah, it gave it a unique look. Like, you haven't seen another creature like that.
Yeah, a lot of care put into every element of this film, I think, for sure. Even though it wasn't something like Black Panther and designing a whole world of Wakanda. But what they did design was all really... specifically designed, and I think a lot of care was put into it.
Yeah, so I guess I'll wrap up our discussion of The Rituals. We went through all the spoiler-heavy stuff, so it's out there on Netflix. I'd be interested to see if they have other stuff they picked up like this, because you compare, like, so this was an acquisition, Open House was an acquisition. Open House generally derided, not any, you know, I thought was not something that was really worth anyone's time to spend watching it. This movie, I think, is worth people's time to watch. So I'm just wondering what else they have in store for the rest of the year. Because, like they said, they would have like 80 originals or something. So hopefully there's stuff that's more on this side of interesting creators doing something, aspiring for more, versus just kind of check the boxes, algorithmic, like, oh, people like this actor and this type of movie. We'll buy
These
it.
social media stars.
Yeah, so hopefully there's more stuff like this in store on Netflix throughout the remainder of the year. And I am interested to see what David Bruckner will do next, because he was somebody whose name was attached to the Friday the 13th movies for a while, and other things didn't come to fruition. But you know, like, this is a movie that I think will probably get more people interested in his work. And then he did stuff like some segments in Southbound and the first VHS, so you can go check those out in The Signal, which we have never covered. So we'll probably
I remember
cover that
hearing
at some
so much
point.
about that and always wanted to watch it and just never did. So I want to go back and check that out now for sure.
Yep, so that'll wrap up this discussion. So that'll bring this episode of the House by Vegas Horror Podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.